So I'm Stuart Elliott. I'm the editor-in-chief of The Real Deal, and I want to welcome our guest tonight, Michael Hershman of the Soloviev Group. He said the only thing off limits tonight is talking about his first wife, so we won't go there. We have plenty of other stuff to discuss.
And the second and the third.
And the second. No, you said that was all right to talk about those
Are
two.
we making a movie? What's the story with these chairs?
The director's chairs. So Soloviev Group is, I'm sure you guys know, one of the big developers to watch today, and Michael is at the helm. They have 9 West 57th, which is probably the premier office building in the city. They just beat out Gary Barnett for a site right across the street, which I want to talk more about. That's a pretty big win. They've got the largest undeveloped plot of land in Manhattan, which they hope to put a casino on. One of the top 25 landowners in the country. And it's very much a family firm. Stefan Soloviev is a pretty unique guy. He has lots of tattoos and 20 kids and looks like he might be in a pop group. So, when you're talking about a family firm like that, you need somebody behind the scenes to run the show, and that's Michael. We did a profile of Michael last year, and the reporters turned it in to me, and I said, did you guys fact check this? What was in the profile was amazing. This guy's backstory before real estate, he was a private investigator involved in the Serpico investigation in New York, a big police investigation in the 70s, Watergate, a bunch of other things. So I want to ask a little bit about that tonight too. But pretty fascinating story, real estate and otherwise. And also want to thank our sponsor tonight before I forget, because I always forget, BSH. Thank you guys for making this happen. Please jump in if you have questions. We try to keep these pretty informal. So I want to jump in and talk about when you first got your start with Stefan. You had worked for his father, Sheldon, over the years, but when Sheldon died, Stefan was hit with a giant tax bill, $1 billion. So I want to hear how you got involved back in 2021. And was that first call, I have $1 billion tax bill. Can you help me?
Well, actually, it was, first let me say how happy I'm to be here tonight. And thank you all for coming out. Is it on? There we go. Okay. So, I knew Sheldon for close to 40 years. I was an advisor and a friend to him. I had my own company called the Fairfax Group, and Sheldon was involved in a lot of different business deals, and his hobby actually was litigation. And so every time things weren't going well, he would call me, and I would. Anytime things weren't going well, Sheldon would call me, and I'd come in and troubleshoot, if you will. And so I saw Stefan grow up and his brother grow up. I knew his family, and of course I know Stefan's kids. And when Sheldon began getting ill in 2020, he and I spoke about my getting a little bit more involved with Stefan, and Stefan felt like he needed the help. And so the first challenge was indeed, so Sheldon, like many folks that are from his generation, he wasn't very good at estate planning because he felt that if he talked about estate planning, he would be vulnerable. It would be a sign of mortality. And so he didn't do very much estate planning, and we were hit with a significant tax bill, which we were able to satisfy about a year and a half ago by selling some residential buildings that we own on the Upper East Side. Yeah. And we sold them at the very, very top of the market.
Mm-hmm. And succession planning is a big issue these days. I mean, you see that all over real estate with the Harry Macklows of the world and Steve Roth and all those guys. So basically you came in, you liquidated these properties, you kind of set everything right. Give us a sense of what the organization looks like now. So you have Stefan at the top, and then he's got 20 kids, and it's a bunch of sons that are involved in running the business, some that are still in college and helping run the organization. So give us a breakdown of what the whole ball of wax kind of looks like.
Well, Stefan is an unusual guy. I mean, he really has this amazing entrepreneurial spirit. But he's not a traditional New York City real estate guy. You described him, he's got a lot of tattoos. He buys his clothes at Walmart on sale. he's very young at heart and in mind, and he's a terrific father with, yes, indeed, many, many children. And he has been training his oldest children, which they're only 22, actually, their birthday. He has quads. So 4 of his children turned 22 earlier this week on Monday. A couple of them, 3 of them, are in different aspects of the operation. But Stefan, as you know, diversified years ago. His heart and his soul really is in farming. I mean, he was born and raised here. He knows real estate backwards and forwards, but he loves agriculture. He loves ranching. He loves arcane things like grain and soybeans. I guess it comes from his when he was 13, 14, he was trading commodities, and that's how he got involved or interested in farming.
Right. So it's hugely diversified, and you have all these family members, and we'll get into the different lines of business later. But what is it like? What are you doing day to day when you're supervising someone like that, and you're supervising its kids who barely have a business education? Are you basically giving an MBA to the entire family?
What am I doing every day? Well, we laugh a lot. I try my best to advise him, whether it's buying a railroad or building new building in New York City, or operating a winery, which we both desperately need on Fridays. So the good thing about this job is that it is diversified, but it'd be tough to do this job if you weren't able to multitask. I'm part of the family, if you will. I think he sees me as a substitute father.
Right.
And some of his kids call me Uncle Mike. Better than being called Granddad.
Yeah. When you were, that's true. When you were working with Sheldon back in the day, was it in a security capacity, and then it kind of morphed into real estate?
No, so we were doing. I was doing a lot of due diligence on mergers and acquisitions for him, litigation support, and as I said, we became more than business associates. We became very, very close friends, and we socialized together. Sheldon was more old line in terms of the real estate people in New York City. He grew up in that environment. He's a true American success story. He came to this country as a child with his father, who was a bricklayer, didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. They put enough money together to buy a small apartment building in Far Rockaway. And Sheldon had a talent. He had a talent for understanding. He was a visionary. When he built 9 West 57th Street, it was completed in 1974. It was one of the first, if not the first, slope building. And the architectural community criticized it roundly, saying it was the ugliest building ever built. And then 10 years later, he was winning awards for design. He always knew to look forward and not back.
Yeah, and I want to get into some of the litigious lists later, but you guys just had a great deal right next to 9 West 57th that's going to kind of continue the legacy. So you bought a parcel pretty much out from under Gary Barnett. You guys both have competing properties right next to each other. So you have 9 West 57th, obviously one of the prime office properties in the city. Right across the street now you have a big development site you can build something on. Are you going to build something there? What are you thinking about?
So look, Sheldon and Stefan bought 5 parcels across the street on Billionaires Row between 5th and 6th some years ago. And this opportunity came along very recently to buy a building adjacent to the assemblage, 24 West 57th, which was in bankruptcy. And it allowed us to extend our FAR for probably another 130,000 square feet. We were in negotiations in 2018, 2019 to build a boutique hotel, residential and retail, on that site. We had reached an agreement with Bulgari, so it would have been a branded hotel and residential tower. And of course, then COVID hit, and we drew back. And frankly, there hasn't really been a lot of talk about that site or the block between 5th and 6th on 57th until very, very recently. And I guess it's several things have happened. One, the completion of the Crown Building and the opening of the Aman Hotel, and certainly an uptick in real estate, particularly interest in foreign investors in the Plaza district. So we're back looking at what to do now. We wouldn't build, obviously, we wouldn't build a spec commercial building.
Right.
If a corporate headquarters wanted us to build a building for them there, we'd certainly consider it. So we're back looking at the boutique hotel, residential, retail environment, and we will do something in the not too distant future. We have about buildable at this point about 750,000 square feet.
Got it. So that's not insignificant. The office market's getting better, isn't it?
It certainly is, yeah. It started to pick up at the, I would say the final 6 months in 2024, and it's very robust now. I mean, it's still difficult for the C-class or B-class buildings, but the A-class buildings is simply not enough.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think about, I really have to ask about this, it's pretty topical, the development climate in the city right now vis-a-vis the city, and obviously you're seeing all this stuff with Eric Adams. What do you think of the city's, development stance right now and what's going on with the city?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, Stefan and I have a very similar outlook about New York City. And it's an outlook, it's looking forward rather than back. This city's a great city. It's always been considered, and I'm biased, I'm from this city, actually east of the city, a little town called Brooklyn. But in order for New York City to remain the center of the universe, if you will, it's got to see new development. And it's got to see not only new development, but new things, outside the box thinking. Sure, we can build more commercial buildings. Sure, we can build more residential, multifamily buildings, retail. But it's time for a change in order to keep New York attractive, both to residents and to visitors. And of course, that's why we're proposing to build an integrated resort on our site on First Avenue between 38th and 41st Street. This would be about a $10 billion project. And yes, it would include a casino. Everyone's talking about a casino. But this would have a 4.7 acre park, a museum. We would have 2 residential towers with 47% affordable housing, not mandatory, voluntary affordable housing. We'd have daycare centers, we'd have medical facilities, we'd have a huge wellness center. We've partnered with one of the, I think, the greatest casino operators in the world, Mohegan. And the difference between us and I'm not here to denigrate any of our opponents. There's very strong competition. We're really the only ones that are both family-run organizations. I mean, we are New Yorkers. We're not Vegas. We're not coming in here to build a flashy, tall lights and water fountains. We want to build something that is in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. That's why the casino would be below grade. You wouldn't even see it from First Avenue. We'd have a 1,250-room hotel with 200 VIP suites, 15 food and beverages. We're committed to giving back to the community. We have a plan to give 2% of net profits directly back to the community with no strings attached. So we're excited about it. And New York needs something like that, whether it's outside or someone else's site. Manhattan needs something like that to keep us ahead of the curve.
Yeah. And what do you say to the fact, I mean, there's some people that are just morally opposed to having a casino. How do you rebut that? Obviously, there's the growth, that's
so
what
look,
you're saying right now.
There are 3 groups that oppose casinos. One is indeed folks that oppose it on moral grounds, whether religious or otherwise, and I respect their opinion. The second group you're all familiar with. It's called anti-development folks. I know many of you in the real estate business. They don't want us to build anything there. In fact, if the Brooklyn Bridge hadn't been built, they wouldn't want to build. So those are folks that we deal with all the time, whether it's at First Avenue or anywhere else in the city where we build. And then there's the group that are simply, it's a fear of the unknown. They hear casino and they think, oh my gosh, Al Capone is coming to town. And they're afraid that it's going to bring crime. But if you look at the statistics, the studies that have been done, casinos improve safety and security throughout the neighborhood. And will there be more traffic? Yes, but look, not a lot of people are going to jump in their private vehicle and drive to the east side to visit a casino. It's just not going to happen. They're going to take public transportation. They're going to take the ferry. We're lucky enough to be close to Grand Central. But we've always, the Soloviev family, Sheldon before that, we have always believed in living in the community in which we build and supporting the community. We've had a foundation for many years that has contributed millions of dollars to a number of charitable causes, not only in New York City, but throughout the world. Wounded warriors, Ukrainian refugees. We are socially responsible. You can do that better, by the way, if you're a family-run company, if you're a private company, than you can if you're a public company that has to explain to the analyst every quarter as to why you may or may not have made your numbers.
Right. And you were telling me beforehand, you were dishing a little bit on some of the other proposals. Do you want to say why those, wouldn't work out as well? SL Green and Related's project proposals? Look,
they're good companies. They are strong competitors, whether it's Cone out in City Field or Sands in Nassau County or Wynn at Related and SL Green with Caesars. All good companies, public companies, coming in from Vegas. And they're coming in for for one reason and one reason alone, and I can't fault them for this. It's about the money. It's about the money. And sure, we want to make a profit, but we are invested in the community. The east side where we want to put this, Freedom Plaza, 7 members of our family live in that community. Also, I should point out that that the folks that are in that community are special to us because they live in some of our buildings. They worship where we worship. They eat at the same restaurants we eat. They're neighbors and they're friends. And the last thing I want to do is do something that would not be beneficial for them.
Right.
We love to give back, and that's what this is important about. As you know, maybe some of you visited our outdoor art exhibit, which ended in December, called Field of Lights. It was a charitable endeavor. We had over 80,000 visitors. This year, beginning May 14th, I decided we're going to have a new exhibit, and it's called Path to Liberty, That Which Unites Us. And it's a prequel to the 250-year anniversary, our birthday in America, the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And I wanted to do this for several reasons. One, I want to draw people's attention to the fact that we all have a birthday, and not just the World Cup in New York in 2026, but also the word democracy has become too politicized. We need to look beneath the word democracy to what was written in our Declaration of Independence. It's about liberty. It's about expression of freedom and happiness, pursuit of liberty. And we need to get back to basics. And so this is going to be an inspirational exhibit. We've sent production teams throughout the country to talk to Americans of all stripe, farmers to CEOs. What makes freedom so important? What their personal life and their business life, how do they benefit from the freedoms that they enjoy here in our country? I saw a survey the other day. 38% of Americans don't believe patriotism is important. If we're to have a future that relies on liberties and freedoms, and I'm not politicizing this, You know, I know we have a new administration. The fact of the matter is we have to understand and appreciate how lucky we are. And I've worked in 140 different countries. I've lived in Asia, I've lived in the Middle East, I've lived elsewhere in Europe. I know how special this country is. I know how lucky we are. So I invite you all to come and experience this because it's going to be heartwarming and it's going to be inspirational.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see this upcoming exhibit one way or the other. Even if you don't get the casino, you're still going to build on the site, which is significant.
Well,
Yeah.
we're going to have this exhibit open May 14th, at least through the end of the year. And you're right. I mean, if we don't get a casino license, we still have zoning to build 4 towers
Yeah.
on that site. And we're builders and we're developers. And something will go up on that site for sure.
And will that be a $6 or $8 billion project? I mean, that is still the biggest undeveloped plot of land in Manhattan.
It is. And right now we have zoning for 4 towers on that site, 1 commercial and 3 residential. About 2.3 billion square feet of development rights. It'd probably be about a $6-7 billion project.
Wow. All right, so TBD on that, and you were concerned that the casino stuff might not get done in time. It was supposed to be a decision by the state by the end of the year, but it might actually end up going longer, potentially.
It's already taken too long. I mean, the whole purpose of granting 3 downstate licenses was the need for tax money. New York is in desperate shape, and the casino license itself costs $500 million, $500 million. It'll generate billions of dollars of tax revenue, sorely needed, and that's why we had hoped, and others had hoped, that the license would be granted a lot sooner than it appears they will be.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll see about that. I want to jump back into your crazy background because it's relatively uncommon background for real estate. So your family actually had a real estate company in Long Island, and then you went to Vietnam and wound up in the spy business, essentially. Take us through how all that happened.
Well, I've had a lot of different chapters in my life. That happens, by the way, when you get older. I had a birthday not long ago, and the birthday cake looked like a brush fire. Thank you. So I was in college back in the '60s here, and I thought that it was important to give back to the country, and so I enlisted in the military and went into military intelligence. I don't know why they chose me for that. The first thing they did was send me to language school. I had no language capability or capacity. But that's the Army for you. They don't always make the right decisions. In fact, some people think the very term military intelligence is a contradiction in terms. But when I came back to the city, I wanted to complete my college degree, and I went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice way back when it was. You folks may not remember this. Bo Dietl, if he's out there somewhere, who's an ex-cop, would remember that the John Jay at that time was co-located with the New York City Police Academy. So you couldn't help but pass because every student was wearing a gun. And
This was the
God
70s?
help the professor that gave you anything less than a B+. In any event, I really enjoyed the intelligence work and the law enforcement work, and I stayed in government for about 15 years. I went to work for the New York City Department of Investigation. It's going to really date me under Mayor Lindsay and the New York State Special Corruption Prosecutor's Office, and then I got recruited to go down and work for the Senate Watergate Committee.
Got it.
And that was an experience, let me tell you.
That's pretty cool. So Serpico was a big scandal in the 70s.
When I first came in, so when I was hired by the Department of Investigation, part of their job was doing investigations in the criminal justice system, of corruption in criminal justice system. And they hired me as one of the first non-public police officer investigators, because, as I said, I had just come out of the military. It was an exciting experience. You all know, all of you are, I assume, New Yorkers, and if I'm missing someone out there who's not, I apologize, but 1 year experience in New York City is worth 5 years experience anywhere else in the world. And, I sort of jumped into that career and was lucky enough to have a number of substantive jobs, not only in New York, but Washington, D.C., until I decided to go out and open my own firm.
And what did you do with Watergate? What was the investigation there that you were, what part of the investigation were you involved in?
Well, I was the deputy chief investigator and then became the chief investigator of the Watergate Committee. And it was all about an investigation of abuse of power at the highest levels in government. And of course, as you know, I don't have to tell you this, it resulted in the resignation of Richard Nixon before he was indicted. But I was lucky enough to go on in my career at my company. The Fairfax Group was a private intelligence company, and bring down 3 other world leaders over the course of the years in India, Bangladesh, and the Philippines. I just was always seemed to be in the right place at the right time.
Wow. Do any of those skills overlap with real estate? Or you bring any of those skills to bear? Intelligence gathering?
Folks don't argue with me a lot.
You just show them your resume. They'd be scared. So that brings us to the 1970s or so, and that's when you started working with Sheldon Solovev, and as we've mentioned, I mean, super, super famous landlord, generally thought of as the most litigious man in New York real estate ever. What made him that way? What made him tick? Like, why was he like that?
Principle. He was old school. You shook his hand, you had a deal. Obviously, they paper it. If you strayed from that deal, he was hard line. He would come after you. He would spend tens of millions of dollars on a $100,000 issue if it was a matter of principle. I think he was a frustrated lawyer. He wasn't a lawyer, but I think he wanted to be a lawyer. And he spent most of his nights reading transcripts and complaints. He just enjoyed that stuff.
Wow. Usually you hear people being lawyers who don't want to be lawyers. I've really never heard of anybody who's not a lawyer and is a frustrated wannabe lawyer, but that's interesting. So does that ethos run through the family? I mean, you've seen 3 generations of family now. Are they all pretty intense people? I mean, you have to kind of navigate 3 generations of a very intense succession-like dynasty family.
No, Stefan is much different than his dad. The first thing I did was got rid of all the litigation. I mean, look, a company our size, you're always going to have some litigation. But the multi-million-dollar suits, I mean, when Sheldon died, the legal community really mourned. They lost a good friend and a great client.
Yeah.
We got rid of all that stuff. We're not about litigation. We're about being entrepreneurs. We're about diversification. As you know, we own railroads and grain facilities and wineries and hotels and restaurants, and we like to be ahead of the curve. We're a lot of our land out west has been designated now for green energy, wind energy and solar energy. We're exploring building computer data centers on our property out west. So we just like diversification and we like to have a very good time doing what we're doing.
Yeah. We had Stefan on stage last year, and he had just gotten back from a trip out west, and he had a bandage around his hand because he had injured it connecting boxcars or something you do with grain, I don't know. But it's such a diversified portfolio. So I want to get into some of the different aspects of it. So grain, for example, he claims that he's going to build a grain company that's twice as big as the real estate stuff you guys do. how much do you know about grain, and what is that whole business about?
As I mentioned earlier, he, because of his background as a teenager in commodity trading, he got interested in farming, and he and his dad had their problems. Sheldon was a very tough father, and Stefan left the family fold and got married young, and moved out west and bought a farm, and he learned about farming, and he fell in love with it. And then as his dad and he reconciled years later, he began to convince his dad to diversify. They got into oil and gas, into agriculture, and then into transportation. And Stefan is just as happy being on a tractor out west than he is anywhere else.
Yeah. So, and obviously he's bought so much land. How do you kind of view that from an investment strategy point of view? Is it's a buy and hold thing? It's a hedge against climate change? How do you, what's the long-term strategy there?
Look, there'll never be enough land, particularly for agricultural purposes. It's a great investment. You see Bill Gates, you see many of the wealthiest people in the nation, and even overseas investors buying agricultural property. They're not operators. We're operators, but they see the future in agriculture, and we are facing, of course, uncertainty in that realm because of climate change, and the drought that's been going on out there for many years now, about 4 or 5 years, has impacted the business. But regardless of the technology advances, people are still going to have to eat and still going to want to eat.
Yeah. You're seeing some more of the brokerages. I just met up with somebody from Eastdale out in LA who is starting a land brokerage division because it's not, the purview of the brokerages to a big extent, but I think they're starting to more glean the fact that hey, big, billionaires want to diversify, and, it's a hedge against urban real estate in some respects.
Yeah, but let me just say this, and I feel this very strongly. There's only very few ways to obtain great wealth in the long term in this country, and real estate remains one of them, and will always remain one of them. Sure, there are ups and downs. We've seen that here over the years, and we'll see it again. But if you want to build wealth for you and your family, real estate.
Yeah. Well, kind of the core of that for Soloviev is 9 West 57th. Is that just the cash cow that just spins off everything?
It is a cash cow. It's an extraordinarily profitable building. And again, it's a testament to Sheldon's vision, building a building of that size overlooking Central Park. We've got a great set of tenants, many of them in the financial industry, Apollo, Lowe's, Chanel, the financial arms, family offices. It's just a great location, and we spend a lot of money modernizing. We just spent $40 million building out a new amenity center on the 27th floor and a new health facility in the building. We don't sleep unless we know that the tenants love that building and want to stay.
What occupancy are you guys at now, and what are the rents?
96% occupancy.
Okay. And what rent levels at the highest?
280.
Okay. And Sheldon himself was very meticulous about tenants, and he would actually turn tenants away and tell them he didn't want them in our building. I mean, Stefan has a more business-friendly approach, right?
Stefan is very tenant and business-friendly. Sheldon, he turned away a deal once, a $50 million deal in that building by a tenant who was a prospective tenant who was ready to sign the lease and asked for one thing, to put security turnstiles in the lobby. And Sheldon said, "This is my building. No one tells me what to do with it." And he tore up that contract.
Yeah, we were so scared to write about him.
By the way, we have security turnstiles in the building now.
Nice.
Firm was it that wanted security turnstiles at the time?
It was a financial firm, internet, but it was not a U.S. based. It was a foreign based.
Well, that's...
I don't think that's an unreasonable request.
No.
But if you didn't like the way you parted your hair, it's my building. I don't need to rent it out. I'll do what I want. But an honest guy. I have to give him credit. He was a man of his word. And as I said earlier, you shook his hand, and you could take that to the bank. There ain't too many of those around.
Yeah. When we wrote our first profile about Sheldon, we were scared he was going to try to come after us. So we just went for it and made the lead of the story. Sheldon Solo will probably sue us for writing the story, and then got into it. But I want to ask also, another big area you guys are working on is the North Fork of Long Island. And you want to talk about there, you talk about NIMBYs earlier. I mean, that's an area where it's really, everybody's got your eye on what you guys are doing out there.
Stefan began buying agricultural property on the North Fork about 8 or 9, maybe 10 years ago, when it was a very good price. And of course, now with the housing shortage on the North Fork, that land has increased in value. We have applied and are applying for rezoning to build some homes, a hotel, some retail on the North Fork. It'll be a long process.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is easy in New York, and Long Island, as far as I know, is still part of New York. But the housing crisis is such there that it's important to bring new housing. I mean, there's nothing available on the South Fork as well as the North Fork. The difference is there's no room to build on the South Fork anymore, where you do have room on the North Fork.
Yeah, but even if you build 5 houses on the North Fork, it's such a process. I want to open it up to questions in a second, but I want to ask one more question first. Stefan's story is so flashy, and the kids and the tattoos and everything. Are you guys exploring, reality TV show? It would just be great to have that on the small screen or big screen. Any talks about that?
Well, I've been exploring getting tattoos.
For yourself? It's not too late.
But, people have said that you should do a reality TV show. With him, just wouldn't be believable.
And then they have to get into your whole backstory, too, so people wouldn't believe it. Questions from the audience? Yes.
How come that property that I have 2 questions. How come that property that you're talking about has been vacant for so long?
You're going to have to repeat that for me.
The 41st Street parcel, why has that been vacant for so long?
It's a very good question. So, of course, it was bought more than 20 years ago, and it had to go through a very lengthy process of remediation. It was a power plant, as you may recall, and zoning. It took years to get that done. And then we started building on one parcel. People don't really realize that 685 First Avenue, which is directly across the street from that parcel, was part of the original land purchase from Con Ed. And we started building on that property around 2018. It was just finished in 2021.
Second question.
Hopefully you succeed in your casino project, but could you put something into the contract for that casino that they do not allow leisure suits?
So,
Well, we might make an exception for polyester leisure suits.
they might come back in style, who knows?
But the casino, look, it's this is a particularly expensive project, because imagine this. We're going to go down 6 stories in solid rock right on the river. The casino will be 2 floors, and then parking beneath that, 1,800 parking spaces. Above that will be the park, and in part it'll be the foundation of the hotel. As I mentioned, we're going to build 1,100 residential units, and well over 500 of those will be affordable housing, workforce housing. So that's an area, if you know that area, it doesn't have a lot down there. There's not a lot of commercial space. There's not a lot of stores or restaurants. It'll change the face of it, but we are building a community advisory board that'll have input as to what to do on the park, what sort of events to hold. We're doing the same with the museum. We're going to build a museum of freedom and democracy, which will also serve as a community center. The communities around, whether it's Sutton or Murray Hill, will be able to use that museum for their meetings. But again, it goes along with the theme of Freedom Plaza. This would be the first museum dedicated to freedom and democracy in the world. It belongs here in New York. Let's not forget, the first capital of this country was New York. New York City is where, in part, freedom was born in this country. And we have a responsibility to make sure that continues throughout the entirety of future.
I guess it makes sense that it's next to the UN as well. There's kind of a tie in there. Let's do one more question. Oh, yes, back there. Oh, ma'am. Oh, right. Yeah.
Okay, so with the casino, if you build 6 floors down, what are the environmental impacts? And, certainly with being on First Avenue and being close to the water or anything like that.
Okay, so look, I spent a lot of time in my career being very close to things when boom. And so I'm a bit hard of hearing. I apologize, but I'm going to ask this gentleman to repeat that question.
You're just saying if you go 6 stories down, what's the environmental impact for the casino site?
Well, of course, being in New York, you know full well that we have to go through an extraordinary detailed environmental study. In this case, it's interesting because typically it would be done by New York City. But under the rules that was passed by the New York State Legislature, the environmental review is going to be done by the state, not the city. And it's starting just about now. And we've had to bring in, obviously, in fact, on the site right now, we're doing core drillings for the environmental review. We don't expect there to be a significant environmental impact. In fact, we're dedicated to making sure that the entire Freedom Plaza, the entire integrated resort, is carbon neutral. Everything we do is going to be environmentally friendly.
Got it. We have one last question from our publisher, Amir Karangi, or question/comment.
Michael, thank you for being here tonight. You're a gentleman, and always great to see you speak. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. And, these are events that we put together for our subscribers because we want the flow of information. We want environments where you could have discussions like this. I read everything about what you guys do because we write about it. Mm-hmm. But also because, I'm interested in what you guys do. You guys are such big players. And to see all this information that you put out here tonight, something, new information that I learned a lot from, and I know everybody else learned from it too. And, creating this kind of environment is really part of the real deal DNA. And this is what we like to do. We love doing events like this. This is an event that we host for our subscribers. So we just hold events like this for no other reason, just to be able to have these conversations. And we do it at different levels too. We're hosting an event in Kiowa Island in South Carolina for principals, which Michael comes to every year, which I'm very grateful for. But we get CEOs and principals from the development world to come to an island somewhere. This year it's Kiowa Island in South Carolina, big golfing community. And if you are a principal, you're in the built world, and you want to hear this sort of talk, this sort of level of conversation, from architecture to design to prop tech to policy. If you're a principal, you're an executive, you're welcome to join us. All 3 of us will be there for sure. Yes, Tom Brady.
Last question.
Yeah.
Such an interesting story, and Sheldon, of course, has a great story. Ever any talk about a book? He should have a book.
Tom, you're totally out of rhythm here. Okay, we're talking about future city. Hold on, we're gonna come back to your comments. But if you are interested, we'd love to have you guys there. If you're vetted, you're qualified, we'd love to have you guys there. I'm going to pass the microphone back to Michael. Tom Brady has a question for you.
A book about
Good
what?
idea.
Sheldon Solovev story. Like, I know he was a private person, but it's a great story and perhaps a two-part question. I know you're with him for many years. Love to hear the real behind-the-scenes story with the GM building, the Conseco lawsuit. I think it was Harry Macklow had the bid, and then he was confused as to how that happened. Was it truly a silent bid?
That was another one of those litigation stories,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah,
Well-
Sheldon did try to buy the
Yeah.
GM building, which is a perfectly nice building. Not as nice as 9 West, but it's a perfectly nice building. So we've been approached by, we have Richard Rubenstein in the audience, who's our public relations guru, and he's been approached by a number of people that wanted us to consider writing a book, not only about Sheldon, about his heritage and Sheldon's father. So Stefan, by the way, you probably know by now that Stefan changed his name, and the reason he changed his name was to honor his grandfather, who's immigrated from Russia with the name Soloviev. The name was changed to Solo, but Stefan wanted to recognize his grandfather and his heritage by doing that. Mm-hmm. Me, I write a book about what I've done, I wouldn't last 10 minutes.
You can't
Well.
confirm or deny.
Well, we'll have you back when the book comes out, and I want to thank Michael, thank all you guys for coming out here. A lot of
Thank you all.
fun.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.